Hi, astrology lovers. It is so nice to be connecting with you here today. My name's Amanda Poole-Walsh, and I'm the CEO and co-founder of Astrology Hub. And I am here today with astrologer Gemini Brett. Due to overwhelming popular demand, we have brought Gemini back to our Facebook Live because he has so much to share with all of us, and I'm so grateful to have you here today, Gemini. Thank you.
You're welcome. My treat.
And I just wanted to give a little bit of a warning. We are using a new platform today, and I get really nervous with new platforms, especially when I'm testing them or trying them out with you all live. So I am hoping that you can be patient with me today. But the thing is that if we can get this down, it offers so much. We can do so much more with these broadcasts. So I'm willing to give it a try, and you're all a little bit of our guinea pig today, so please, I will actually just thank you in advance for your patience. All right, so Gemini, let's dive in. We are talking today about the secrets and the shadows, the hidden secrets of Washington, D.C., what's hidden in the stones, and we're going to bring that around to how that relates to the Great American Eclipse that is happening in not very much time from now. We just have a few more weeks. So let's just go ahead and get started. If I have some of the quotes that you gave me, I have those prepared. So if we want to show some of those on screen, just let me know, okay?
Sounds good. Yeah, where to begin? No, it's like while we breathe and come in here, I thought I would mention some of where people can find me online just because I neglected to do that last time. And a lot of people asked. So my website is morethan.astrology.com. And there's all sorts of stuff there. And then on Facebook, you can find me at Arts of the Chart. It's plural, Arts of the Chart. And if you do, you'll find at the top of the postings a recent project I just started, which is tuned to the movement of the moon, transmitting the essence of the 12 archetypes. So like rewinding to the beginning of our vocabulary, as we call it, though it's so much more. And then there's also on the second post, 3-hour, 33-minute, and 33-second YouTube movie I made some time ago about the star alignments of Washington, D.C. And it's just such a trip. My sister was living in D.C. for a while, and I visited a bunch, and I would take people on these like mystical tours into these secrets that really aren't hidden. I mean, like the myths and astrology. There's zodiacs all over the place, really beautiful zodiacs. And it's a pretty amazing thing that's just right there in front of your eyes, as long as you open them to look. And we can't go into all that obviously today, and that's a long movie, and I don't even share all the star alignments there, but I found things in DC that taught me astrology in a way that I've never seen in a book. And it almost feels to me like some of our craft that's kind of been covered up in secret societies, or I don't know, that might go back to the beginning of time, are shown there when you begin to decode the way that they map the city in the temples themselves to align to sacred stars on the rise and set.
Are you there?
I am. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
All right.
Yes. All right. So yes, there's lots of the hidden secrets there, and it's actually not hidden in plain view. So let's talk a little bit about that. I know you're going to talk about the goddess and how she's a part of our, the fabric of our beginnings as a country. So, wherever you want to go next.
Sounds like a couple of people are writing that they're missing audio, but not everyone is. So.
Well, yeah, let's check it. Let's check it. Can everybody hear us okay? I feel like they would tell us in like mass.
Yeah, I only saw one of those messages.
Okay.
Donald?
Nice.
I'm going to pour a cup of tea for you guys here. This is the solar eclipse cup of my teacup tarot. And a lot like the Astrology Hub logo, right, of this solar eclipse forming. We see this on a lot of countries' flags, right? The 5-pointed star, which really is Venus. And then what people see is a crescent moon, but actually what's happening is it's a solar eclipse forming because the crescent goes too far. It's just like this Astrology Hub logo. So these are like these secrets in plain sight that we're talking about here.
You know, it's so great, everybody, when you actually meet with Gemini in person, he always makes sure to start the meeting with a very beautiful and elaborate tea ceremony, which just sets the space. So I love that you're bringing that in for our Facebook Live as well, Gemini.
Yeah, well, it's a way to honor the most important planet, the one that we chose, Earth, and her teaching beings who often come through these plants and animals that guide us along our way. All right, well, I thought it'd be cool to pick up a little bit from where we ended last time, because there wasn't too much feedback, but there was a little bit about some of the so-called prophecies of what this eclipse might mean for our country and our president. This tea that I'm drinking, by the way, it's called Tiger's Nest. So we're going to come comfortably into the place where sometimes we can get really afraid, right? And move into these shadows, but with the quest of bringing light out of them. So I hopefully transmitted clearly that I'm not praying for anyone to get shot or anything like that. I do think that it's interesting that some impeachment stuff was filed like just now, right? But the whole goal was to say, well, what do you see in the outer world? Reflect that within. All right. So some of the old traditions suggest that when you have such strong eclipse alignments like our president does coming up, you kind of either get eclipsed or you can eclipse your competition. So some of the freaky nature of this eclipse in Trump's chart literally might just be him winning that election in a way that was pretty unpredictable and kind of eclipsy. We'll see what might be more. And there's a lot of debate in the astrological communities about how long the energy of an eclipse is alive for, either before the eclipse and after the eclipse. I found a lot in my own research, which is rather limited in experience and witness of friends, that it kind of seems to be like the moon at the bendings about 3 months before the new moon at the bendings to the new moon at the bendings following 3 months after. But last interview, I talked about Kennedy's assassination in 1963, and the eclipse was a good 4 months and some days before that event. And I do feel they were very much related, that eclipse being right on his Saturn. So, that's the point of the thing not to know, says Jack Skeleton, one of my favorite gurus, which reminds us that sometimes super predictive is not super productive, right? My work as an astrologer, my play as an astrologer, is to open windows into these potential energies, and not to say this means your 7th child will die by butterfly wing on the playground at the age of 8 or whatever, but rather to say that these are what are available. How do you want to align your intentions to work with that? And so this is what we're getting into with this eclipse for all of us. Yeah, there's this great saying that any fool can count the number of seeds in an apple, not the wisest being can count the number of apples in a seed. And I really feel that astrology is like this. It's a moment of the universe actualized, but the potentials are many, right? There's a song that's like the fate of the thing, but we can dance to a song any way we choose, and this is free will. All right. So that being said, when we look at this eclipse coming up, this Regulus eclipse, and we spent some time speaking about that last time, and many of your other guests have, this eclipse is member to a family. The astronomical convention is Saros cycle 145. And I first heard about Saros cycles astrologically from Bernadette Brady, who was one of your teachers for the eclipse course. And Bernadette and many other astrologers suggest that we can basically understand what the entire promise of the cycle, this one starting in 1639 and will be around till 2991, coming around every 18 years, 11 days, 8 hours as they do, that you can basically look at the birth chart, right, the first eclipse of the entire cycle, and glean what the cycle itself is about. So here's our first new technology challenge. Let's see, there's a chart you have called First Eclipse. And if you're looking at my numbered charts, I think it would be number 3. It's the year 1639.
Bear with me, everybody. I am going to share my screen, and we'll see how this goes. Okay, so which one?
It's you should say 1639, maybe first solar series 145. It'll be one of the yellow ones.
Can you see? Okay. 145 center. Okay, I think I got it. Can you see that?
It's tiny, but I can, and that is the right one.
Okay, so let me Let me just try and change the screen so everybody can see it a little bit bigger. But now you can't see that. Okay.
No. I mean, I can see it there. I don't know if everyone's seeing the same size screen that I am, but...
Can you see it bigger now?
A little bit. But
okay.
Just talk about what's going on here. Okay, so this is the first eclipse of this series. It was in the year 1639. It was on January 4th. It was in the 14th degree of Capricorn. I mean, interestingly, this is right across from where the sun was on July 4th, 1776, which is what most astrologers use for the kind of birth date of the United States of America, right? The signing of the Declaration, they say, although it was actually not really signed till August, and there's been a lot of debate about that. Anyway, here we're looking at an eclipse in the 14th degree of Capricorn, and we're going to get to the Sabian symbol for that degree, which I think is really beautiful for this conversation. But one thing I wanted to point out, I mean, there's so much on this chart, but you can see a very strong alignment of Jupiter and Neptune in Scorpio across from Pluto in Taurus. Now, at this point in 1639, neither Neptune, which was discovered in 1846, and Pluto in 1930 had been discovered, but, you know, as we talked about last time, just because you don't see it doesn't mean you don't be it. So it's a very significant alignment, opposition between Jupiter, Neptune in Scorpio, and Pluto in Taurus. So what does it mean? How does that play out in this eclipse in this family ahead? Well, if we look at that from a mundane perspective, there's a lot of like money in that axis and power in that axis when we talk about Scorpio. Now, if I'm sitting with somebody at my tea table and talking about their chart, that's not where I'm going with Scorpio, Taurus. I'm going to talk more about living a full aliveness of the heart, the art of the heart, Scorpio, full sensuality with Taurus, the art of the body, the art of the earth. But from a mundane perspective, we might look at these as some of the power energetics in Scorpio and with Pluto involved. And Taurus, which sadly has been kind of twisted into this idea of a Merrill Lynch bull instead of the chilling out cow, which I feel is her true place. But that is some way that it shows up from a mundane perspective. And we've seen that with this eclipse cycle. We've seen some interesting power and money struggles. I mean, we might see that every year, right? If we're tuning into the strange politic of the thing. So that's just something I want to call attention to. We won't look at that too much, but if you see those degrees, it's very late Scorpio, it's very late Taurus. And I mean, there was in the 1700s, this eclipse came around and it was the same time as the Stamp Act, which was kind of the first tax that was imposed on the colonists by England, and that really seeded the revolution and came around for the end of the Revolutionary War and some really interesting times when we get into kind of the shadow state of money and control by fiat currency. We don't want to go too far down that rabbit hole today. But let's look at this 14th degree of Capricorn, this degree that's right across from the fixed star Sirius, right across from the United States sun, if we use that July 4th, 1776. And here the Sabian symbol for that degree. So most of you probably are aware of the Sabian symbols, but they were channeled by a great psychic, Elsie Wheeler, in the late 1920s in a park in San Diego at the behest of the great humanistic astrologer Mark Edmund Jones. And that's a really beautiful image. And do you want me to, I can just read, this is
yeah, you know what, actually, let me pull up that,
okay.
that what you sent me, which is the actual Sabian symbol, right?
Yeah.
1 second. Okay, so I'm going to find that here. You gave me the actual words.
Yeah, I've got them right here too. I could read them. Okay,
I'm showing it on the screen too. So go ahead.
Okay, I don't see it on the screen, but that's all right. But
I think they do. I hope so. Okay.
Maybe people could let us know.
Yeah.
Anyway, the 14th degree of Capricorn reads like this. An ancient bas-relief carved in granite remains a witness to a long-forgotten culture. And maybe we could see that image again, Amanda, of astronomy.
Okay. All right. Let's bring that up. Okay.
In Washington, D.C., basically everything is centered around the Capitol building. Now, the cool thing about that, instead of it being centered around the White House, some of the different geometries were aligned there, like the meridian, right? The United States tried to get the zero meridian for the world, like Greenwich Mean Time, through the U.S. And there's a Meridian Hill Park in D.C. that's on the same street as the White House and the headquarters of Scottish Rites Freemasonry. And those cats might show up here a little bit as we move along, too. But the Capitol building itself, this beautiful dome with this goddess Freedom standing on top of it, and her body's facing east, but her gaze to the northeast, I believe, is at the summer solstice sunrise from DC. And across the street is, in our time, the Supreme Court building, and then also towards the winter solstice sunrise. Like literally, if you're looking from the rotunda of the Capitol building, the winter solstice sunrise sparks this golden torch on top of the dome of the Library of Congress, which is the largest library in the world, right? And the building is just beautiful. I mean, it could be considered overdone for sure, but it's pretty amazing. I spent a lot of time in there. And you enter through these doors where there's bas-reliefs, right? Think of this symbol. An ancient bas-relief carved in granite remains witness to a long-forgotten culture. And this is one of the muses that's carved there. This is Astronomia, right? The muse of astronomy and the stars and astrology. She's actually gazing north. And if you can see here her gaze, she's about 38 degrees above horizontal, which is exactly where Polaris, the North Star, sits in Washington, D.C., because the altitude to the North Star will equal your latitude in the Northern Hemisphere. So here she is. She's holding this globe. We can see some of the constellations of the zodiac there. She's pointing to Libra. But the other constellations, the Scorpion and the Archer, the only two signs that we represent those constellations with, all those signs and constellations are not the same thing, that have arrows and they point to the center of the galaxy. But I just love that she's staring at the North Star, and that you basically enter with these muses when you come into the Library of Congress. So that's a trip. Now, at the top of the stairs of the Library of Congress, actually before you go in on the lower level, there's a fountain. And I think we could probably close that image now if you want, Amanda. There's a fountain of Neptune, of Poseidon, right? And mer people all around him. And it's at the very lowest level. And you walk up there and you walk in the doors below these bas-reliefs. And then you enter this amazing building with these just quotes everywhere and these amazing statues. And at the very top, it's kind of like the tallest thing in DC besides the Washington Monument, which certainly symbolically doesn't seem to have anything to do with the goddess, right? But at the top of the stairs, gazing at the Capitol building, at the Washington Monument, basically gazing west, is Athena. And we don't have an image of her here, but if you want at home, you can search on Google Library of Congress, Athena, or Minerva, Minerva, that's her name in the Latin. And you'll see this amazing tile mosaic of the goddess Athena, who's holding her spear and her shield that has Medusa's head on it. And I think the Medusa story is kind of one of the key stories that we can engage with when we're looking at the potential of rebirth of light through the shadow of eclipse. So yeah, Mandy Young writes goddess of wisdom, indeed, in craft and also warfare, and that's really interesting. Now, when I first connected to this beautiful mosaic, I was in a Venus group of like 80 women and 4 dudes. And I posted a picture, and what I really wanted to show was the owl, who's known to be sacred to Minerva, goddess of wisdom. But what most people who did respond caught on to was Medusa, right? And this pain of Medusa. And I heard a lot about the patriarchy and the bearing of the feminine energy and these things. And, you know, in the story, it's actually Athena who turns Medusa's hair to snakes. And when I wrote that, this is a brilliant response I'd love to share. Somebody wrote, yeah, well, Athena was born out of the skull of Zeus, so she's like the brainchild of the patriarchy, which is at least, if nothing else, an absolute genius response. But the deal with Poseidon, when I feel into this being a storyteller, and on my storytelling podcast, and you can find all the episodes on the homepage of morethan-astrology.com, there's an episode called Pegasus, Perseus, and Medusa. And the really fast version is basically that for the city of Athens, there was a competition for who would be the patron god or goddess of that city, and whoever could bring forth the greatest creation. And that Poseidon brought forth, some say the horse, or brought forth this spring when he struck his trident in the stone of that city, and outflowed this water, but it was salty, so it was no good. And Athena brought forth the olive branch, which was celebrated, and clearly she won because the city was named Athens. And many have suggested that DC itself and that this project of the United States is meant to be the new Athens or the new Atlantis, and I'll get back to that. But so Athena won this, and in his anger, it is said Poseidon or Neptune, like, betrayed her hallowed halls by making love to this beautiful queen of Libya, Medusa. Some say he raped her, right? So we get into a lot of heavier energy when we talk about that. I talk about that at length in the podcast and cross some lines maybe. But anyway, in her anger, Athena, who couldn't really torture Poseidon, she turned Medusa's hair into snakes. Now this was this most beautiful queen of Libya, and she was turned into this monster. So the looks that could kill as a beautiful woman now became very literal. Like if you looked at Medusa, you would turn to stone, right? And I feel just in that heart of that story that she's in this place of torture. And eventually Athena and Hermes, Mercury, assisted Perseus, a great hero, who was a great defender of the feminine. I feel he's a true hero of mine. She sent him to cut Medusa's head off. He did this actually for his mom. Anyway, when the blood of the Gorgon Medusa struck the stone of the temple, says the story, Pegasus was born, this winged horse that rises to the heavens, and also the warrior Chrysaor. So why do I tell that story? Because in this fear of eclipses and in this pain and in this shadow and in this strange place where we might feel a little Gorgon, and astrology itself, we know, has, in very much like modern media, really like propagated fear-based messages for so long, right? That's part of what we're healing here. Well, we don't want to avoid the shadow or avoid the painful potential that certainly planetary alignments open up for us for the sake of growth. But just promoting fear for the sake of ticket sales, I feel, is something that's gone along for a long time. So what is the state of Medusa? And for me, it's kind of that chrysalis of the cocoon, you know. It's said that the caterpillar like turns to like complete goo in their transformation to butterfly, which must, you know, projecting my own emotions onto caterpillar must be a pretty scary thing, right? And caterpillars are beautiful and they're super cozy, you know, but they have this other promise. They have this other life that's ahead of them, and butterfly, right? So there's that time, I think, where Medusa, who, according to the story anyway, and there's many versions, and I think we should ask with our heart if the stories that we're told are actually their true essence. And I think when our heart says no, we have the almost responsibility to rewrite them for ourselves. But here she was, this beautiful queen on top of the world, you know, and she went into this very dark state, becoming this monster so that she could become that winged horse and rise to the heavens, you know. And I think that in my own experience of my reality at this point, and over the course of the last 10 years or whatever, I've, like many of us, you know, been engaged in some kind of strange awakening or transformational process. And my own path has been a pretty shadowy path, you know, maybe true to my Scorpio sun, but into the deep rabbit holes of conspiracy theory and fear. And we can get stuck in those places pretty easily. And we can try to run around shaking people awake, you know. And I think this is something that we really want to talk about with this eclipse cycle as well, because nobody likes to be shaken awake. And when we are, we lose the vision, we lose the dream. So we're speaking at this time with a Pisces moon conjunct Neptune. Let's really honor that dream. What I've come to find from the tellings of that Aries Pisces cusp, you know, the birthplace in so many ways, is that the true role of the warrior is to keep the fire lit so that the dreamer can sleep peacefully. For when they awaken at their own pace, they will bring forth the vision that will set us free. And we are all dreamers, and we are all awakening. So it's important for us, I think, when we see these things as astrologers, not to run around spreading fear or, you know, in protecting Earth from the disasters of industry and climate change. So often we can run around and just yell to people that if they don't change their ways right now, we're all going to die. And we're just kind of serving this fear-based message at that time. So how can we awaken ourselves further and then beam that light? This is like Leo style. And also remember to participate with the deep beauty of our Earth, because she hears that from us, yeah, and she'll respond from that.
Absolutely. I'm hearing a little echo when I'm talking.
I hear you not echoed right now, Amanda.
Wow, okay. All right, well, I just wanted to echo what you're saying in terms of the waking up and how astrology and the world has proliferated fear up until now, and I can see it. You know, we're in business, so there is a acknowledgement that fear actually does sell more. You know, so if you're truly profit driven, if you're truly just driven by what people respond to, you will lead with that fear, because that is actually what people respond to, and that does drive ticket sales. But like you said, we're being asked to step into something different, being asked to step into something new, where we actually do consider the impact of our words, where we consider the impact of the message that we're putting out there, and how that would actually affect the Earth and affect the people and affect our children. So I think this conversation to me is so relevant, especially as it pertains to the eclipse, because I've been in it. You know, I've been in it. There's been times where it's like, well, you know, do we use these words or these words? Do we say this or that? And it's very important to me personally and to the whole team at Astrology Hub that there is a line of integrity that we maintain around this eclipse. With that said, like you said, we can't put our heads in the sand either. You know, it's not about not talking about you know, the shadow of our country, or our individual shadows, or the collective shadow, you know, whatever that is. It's not about avoiding that either. So it is a really tricky line. And I think all of us, in all of our conversations with everyone that we meet, you know, people are going to be asking us. We're the ones who are tuning in to what's going on right now. So you will be asked, everyone out there, you will be asked, what does it mean? Is this something I should be afraid of? Is this scary? You know, something bad going to happen? And I think it's up to each one of us to really be mindful of the message that we are putting out to those in our lives immediately. And if you do have a platform where you're speaking to a lot of people at once, how you are actually conveying what this eclipse is about. And so, Gemini, I really appreciate that about you, because I can hear that, and I feel that in your languaging and your wording as well. So
yeah, and that being said, I just toured around for a month giving talks about this eclipse and mentioned the things we spoke about last time and some that we didn't. And we talked about how this eclipse family was aligned to Hiroshima, which seems interesting with that Jupiter, Neptune, Pluto aspect on the first chart to me. Okay.
Well, it is. I mean, it is what it is, right? Gemini, I'm wondering if this is a good time to bring up that quote, the Native American quote that you gave me.
Let's hold off on just a second, because I'm going to take us a little deeper into the fear space. All right. So people grab your strong stones, and with love in our heart, let's go into this place, because not only is this eclipse family have ties to Hiroshima, that was when it came around in 1945. But the last time we had a total solar eclipse in this country, in the United States, in the continental United States, was 1979, February 26th. Now, the shadow path was only in the Northwest, but a month later was 3 Mile Island, right? So this is the greatest nuclear accident, like basically the American Chernobyl. And why I open that, right, is because that feeling of powerlessness can help us engage with our own fear and help us touch into and meet that which we have the power to eclipse in ourselves at this time, to come and grow those wings. All right. So I didn't finish, like Medusa's looking at Capitol, Washington Monument, Lincoln, and then these bridges, and there's Pegasus is on the sides of the bridges. So the full story is written in stone there. Now, there's a lot of astrologer friends that I have, mundane astrologers, who have looked at this eclipse family in general to say, well, it's like super nuclear. But I got to say, in my own research, what I found is a lot of treaties for limiting test bans and like the atmosphere, trying to put things through. It doesn't feel like such like a crazy, the bomb is going to be dropped lineage of this particular eclipse. To me, it actually feels like we had that huge moment and now we're learning how to clean it up and not fall prey to this energy of power. But there is one thing that happened this year around the time of the bendings, and it was news to me, but the UK Tokamak Energies announced the startup of their most recent nuclear reactor. Okay, and this is like a sun, like fission or fusion, not like fission, like the nuclear power plants we know. And the goal of this thing is to reach 100 million degrees Celsius by 2018, which is 7 times hotter than the sun. What? And it's not in the UK alone. These things are all over the place. And I had no idea about it. They call them stars in a jar. Now, is it wise to create a star on our planet? And it really, speaking of Atlantis or the new Atlantis, this kind of feels like the rumors of the old Atlantis when somebody was like, okay, turn it on. And then the whole ship sunk, you know. But, and I invoke that, which is a painful thing to do, but I invoke that because it opens this feeling of powerlessness, you know, and that place of true fear, right? Where I mean, it seems like we should all have a say in the startup of a thing that could blow us all away, you know, like these CERN reactors, these kinds of things, right? And maybe we do on a higher level. And I think this is an interesting thing for us to touch into from a philosophical standpoint. And also, maybe this thing will work. Because if it does, the whole idea is it releases us from our oil and gas fission dependencies. You know, I would say sun, wind, whatever, better way to go probably than creating a star on the earth. But what if it works? And what if in some way, as Evelyn agrees here, we do have a say, some kind of mystical say. Now, we are no strangers in our own lives experience. Most of us who come to astrology come for what? Feeling, healing, knowing, growing, right? These things that happen to us where we are full victims and they did this to me, that poison becomes medicine as we grow and see, actually, because that helped me grow, they did this for me. And maybe because we are all one, I did this for me through that strange mirror, that's that other person. Now we're engaged in a time that is just chaotic. And we feel, I think a lot of us, and maybe not all, so I want to be careful here. I don't want to speak for you, but for me, awakening to this idea that maybe this isn't the land of the brave and the home of the free, as I was taught it to be. And, you know, maybe some of these things that we're doing overseas and have been for a long time as the so-called like police, peaceful police of the world are pretty off center. And, you know, we who travel around, like it's now kind of like difficult to be American to show up in another country. And that's a really sad thing. Now, how do we write that course, right? And what's the deal with it, with all of this racism and sexism spewing to the surface again, right? After, you know, 8 years of maybe that's gone away and the Civil Rights Act fully came through, in which just wasn't really true. And so we're in a time where this stuff that never really left, we are healing. It's so close to the surface. So we can see how much it is poisoning our culture. And that's a reflection of self, you know? So that doesn't mean each of us is a racist and a sexist, but there's something within where maybe we're afraid to see ourselves clearly. And it's these fear points, it's these shadow points, it's the victim place, it's the powerless, energetic, that really can be a spirit guide to take us into these deeper places of self, so we can find a bright light that hasn't been there yet, because we are the star in the jar, you know? And when I touch into DC, I see a lot of these symbols. It's hard not to fall into full-on deification out there. Like, you know, I cruise around, I can go there as this like avid, like against the man or whatever. And then it's like, whoa, look at these beautiful things. And George Washington was so cool, and Jefferson and whatever. But some of the symbols, I think, are helping us, if we choose to engage with them, contemplate and awaken and realign perhaps what the original intent or purpose of this project was. So two of my favorites, right outside of the National Archives, where the Declaration and Constitution are kept, they have statues on the four corners. And the one in the southeast, so think winter solstice sunrise, you know, the lowest light of the year, it's this huge warrior, and like tufted helmet and pecs and gigantic sword. And it says, eternal vigilance is the price of liberty.
Interesting.
Right?
Yeah.
And then what does that mean? Because the symbol they're showing me with this warrior kind of seems to align with what I was, I'll say, programmed to believe, is that we have to be at war to have peace. Which is just the most ridiculous idea ever, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, and it's prevalent. It's basically what I'm hearing that echo again. Is there something we can do about the echo? Okay, fantastic. I'm sorry, you guys. Thank you for your patience with the new platform. I really appreciate it. But what I was going to say is I've heard that a lot. I mean, and I don't want to call out the military, you know, as good or bad. I don't want to make a judgment. And the thing that I hear over and over is, well, we need these people to protect our soil. You know, we need everyone to go out and fight so that the war doesn't happen here on our soil. And while I understand that, it always brings me to this place of, my God, is there any other way? You know, is there a better way for us to do this? Because that just seems, you know, if everybody's doing that, then we're all just fighting forever, you know, so.
And I think we get this way in our own lives. We get into these things, and maybe this is that Jupiter, Neptune, Scorpio on the first chart too. We only grow through what we go through. I mean, that might be true, but we don't only grow through disaster and despair and natural selection, contrary to what I was taught by Darwin, you know? And no pain, no gain, that kind of concept, right? So true alchemical magic, I think, is to realize that this is a place of growth. And we choose our curriculum by showing what we grow through. It's really that simple. What's difficult is to realign ourselves to grow through bliss.
Totally.
Because we're forced to engage when it gets difficult. And when it gets easy, it's like, cool, karmic vacation. I'm just going to enjoy it, you know. And then it has to get dark so we can grow again, right?
Totally. Gemini, I love, well, hold on real quick, because Michael Beckwith has a great quote. He says, pain pushes until vision pulls. So we'll just get pushed around by that pain in our lives until there's a vision that seeds so deeply in us that pulls us. And then that's the way that we're learning. We're learning through, you know, engaging and co-creating with that vision, which is a totally different orientation with life. So I just think that's interesting. I think of it all the time, you know, because there's been a lot of pain that's pushed me around, and I finally feel like I'm in a place where vision is pulling me more than pain is pushing me, and it feels really amazing to be in that place.
Yeah, I mean, one of the great gifts of, you know, we could say eighth house, but like death and loss, is that inspires us to begin asking why. Where do we come from? Where are we going? What is this place? These great questions that can only be answered with greater questions. It's like the ninth, you know, and but we can do that without a death, you see. So, I mean, like, astrology just rained in for me from the skies. Now I've been doing a lot of self-work or whatever, asking what I'm supposed to be. And then suddenly, like literally, I received astrology in hours in a very weird way. And then I asked why. And I ask that question every day to stay engaged with this growth through that vision. Mm-hmm. What does this mean for me? So why do I need to be smacked around before I really dig into and dive into and release myself into and allow the power of the why? And that's part of this eclipse thing. So in our last interview, we talked about Y2K when this eclipse last came around and all of that fear, and speaking about like the media, like propagation of fear, right? So as like the conspiracy theorist on too many websites, really without vision, it was kind of, I was being steered to this idea that the controlling forces, the they, you know, I was really on that trip at that time. We're like steering our consciousness to just create disaster, because we know that if we're in a fear-based mindset individually, we're calling fear-based experiences into our lives. And that's not necessarily a terrible thing if we remain conscious and play through them, but we can also call in bliss and beauty and love for growth, right? But what happened, as we discussed last time, it's like people got paid who could do the ones and zeros and it was all good. We didn't blow up. 2012 is another great example. You look at the billboards of the movies, right? It's we were warned, and there's like tidal waves taking out New York and Tibet and everywhere, right? And so you can get into this mindset, oh, okay, well, the media manipulators are trying to create this place for us to go into a fearful disaster. So we will literally consciously co-create this destruction and cataclysm. But why does anybody want to do that, you know? And I've since fascinated the other side of the thing that I wouldn't allow myself to open to that time. What if these folks actually created that in this dream space so we could play it out on the movie screen, because it was a potential at the time? And so we played it out in the fantasies, and then it didn't have to happen in our chosen reality, right? And this is like part of what DC's helped me do, not just to go into, okay, this thing's all good, because we'll talk about how clearly, historically, there's a lot of tension here. It's very Medusa, you know? But we can be the Pegasus that rises out of this thing. So.
Okay, Gemini, I just want to do a quick time check. We have about 15 minutes, so.
Okay, let's share the Buckminster Fuller quote.
Okay. I love this. Okay, so I am hopefully showing this. Can everybody see that on your screen? It says you never change things by fighting the existing reality.
I can only see that sentence.
Right, and then I'll put the second sentence up in just a sec. Yeah, there's only so much room. Okay. And then
you never change things by fighting the existing reality. To change something, build a new model that makes the existing model obsolete. And this is what we are doing as conscious co-creators in intentional community now. We're learning how to farm again. We're learning how to dance with one another again. We're learning how in circle to share our hearts with one another, women's groups, men's groups, and people's groups, humans groups. We're learning to be with the animals again, you know, and to listen to the voice of the planets and the plants, you know. And we are creating, right? So if we want to free ourselves from oil, gas, whatever, we'll create new energy. And you can do that. And we do that by freeing our energy. And yes, this is the new paradigm, right? But the entrance to the new paradigm is a bit of the struggle of shaking off the old programming of the old one, right? And that's okay. So we're going through this great shift, and Leo gives us this great fire if we do this right. So there's nothing to fear but fear itself is one of the cool quotes. And I'll say that there's always in DC, there's a complement between these yang and yin statues. So that warrior in the southeast is complemented in the place of the rest, the west, the southwest, by a goddess with a child, shaft of wheat. And it says something like the seeds of the past, or I wish I could say the quote, but history is the seed that will bring forth the harvest of the future. And see, that's worth protecting. What's worth protecting is mother and child. And so I don't mean this from some patriarchal, like masculine point. We are the masculine and the feminine and the child. And we all have the right to be born of our mother and to be born of spirit, to be born again. That's what the virgin child is. And it's symbolized everywhere in DC. All right. So I think a good place to go, Amanda, just for the sake of time, is to look at the chart for the centered solar eclipse of this cycle, or the maximum solar eclipse of this cycle. It's 2342. And while you dig that up, I'll just say this because, again, there's been this transmission that it's the first eclipse of an entire family that kind of predicts what the energetic for the whole thing is. And there's so many eclipses it can barely be seen. So in the middle of the eclipse family, and this is actually the astronomical convention, they're named towards the middle of the eclipses when the eclipse is most centered. So like literally the centered alignment of Earth, Moon, Sun. It's not necessarily the longest eclipse of the cycle for reasons astronomical we don't need to get into right now, but it's the most centered on the Earth. This one's going to be close to the Solomon Islands. We're not going to live to see it in these monkey suits. It's in the year 2342 in March. I can't see the date exactly on that screen, but that's okay. What I want to show is look how much of a Pisces planet party this is. Now we see the goddess Venus in Aquarius as a huge nature of revolution here, I believe. And I'm very interested in...
Wait, so Gemini, just real quick, we're looking at March 7th, 2342?
Right, a long time in the future. So we're not going to live to see this. But what this is the middle eclipse of this entire family. So the eclipses will grow more and more total between now and then then they will start separating from totality. And what I'm suggesting here is that there's something about the midlife moment of the eclipse, the most centered eclipse. Now, what I've done to try to confirm this theory is I've looked at the midlife moment for people. Somebody mentioned Abraham Lincoln in the comments before. What do we know him best for? But abolition, right? And it says, what I basically did was ran a Davidson chart for his death moment and his birth moment. And that got me the exact second of his midlife, right? It was 4 days before he first publicly denounced slavery. And that was to the Supreme Court in Illinois. I did this for a lot of people, and I'm finding a lot of interesting leads in that way. So what I'm suggesting here is that all of these eclipses are kind of building to this serious Pisces party. Now, and you can close the screen if you like, we won't do too much of the astrological delineation for the sake of time. What does it take to birth a mystic? What is required to create a space for true compassion? Because these are notes of the Pisces tunes, you see, the poet, and that great way of ascension and return to source, and understanding that we are all one and that water is life. These are some of the themes that I see in that chart, in that eclipse. And I would say is part of this eclipse that's coming our way, it's part of the promise of what we're working towards. And maybe now that that great quote from Crazy Horse.
Crazy Horse, okay. So I had to break it up into lots of different little pieces here.
Right. So I'll just read it out loud as they're coming up.
Okay.
Upon suffering beyond suffering, the red nation shall rise again, and it shall be a blessing for a sick world. A world filled with broken promises, selfishness, and separations. A world longing for light again. I see a time of 7 generations when all the colors of mankind will gather under the sacred tree, and the whole earth will become one circle again. In that day, there will be those among the Lakota who will carry knowledge and understanding of unity. And the young white ones will come to those of my people and ask for this wisdom. I salute the light within your eyes where the whole universe dwells. For when you are at that center within you, and I am at that place within me, we shall be one. And what a beautiful And I mean, it's just hard not to break down in tears. You know, I mean, this is right before this man was killed for defending his land. And so, you know, here's the trip, is that there was this idea of a new Atlantis, of a new Athens, of a space, so said it would seem in the mystery traditions, to have been preserved for this project, that Columbus did not mistakenly discover this place and thought it was India, that he flew the Templar flag for a reason, that people from all nations had been coming to this land for a long time and were trading and had peaceful relations with the true people of America, as we call it now. And that in the mystery traditions, supposedly, it was suggested that this space would be preserved from them. We can look at people like Sir Francis Bacon, the possible writer of Shakespeare, and I mean, I could go on and on. We don't have time for all of this. But how can we say that we are tuned to this true way of liberty and freedom and peace and the return of philosophy and equality and balance and these beautiful ideals when we, you know, as a country have committed one of the grossest genocides in history, right? These people that came over with slaves, most of them. So a lot of these heroes that we would deify, even Abraham Lincoln, right? Some of the atrocities against the native peoples of this land under his watch are something to tune into. Now, but if we tune ourselves into that crazy horse statement, which is just too sane to call crazy, and apply that to our own lives, and in these times of kind of fear-based politic and media and even astrology doing this, because we learn to read the chart and we can get really scared of the thing, and it does not necessarily help unless we're willing to go to that place to bring a new light out. That's what eclipses are about. There is a promise, there is a seed that was planted that can come around. And it's not only through these ideals, but it's also through connecting to the true wisdom of this land, which fortunately has not been destroyed completely. And it can be accessed simply by speaking with a tree. You know, I'm weird enough to say that. But better yet, to go to the elders who have always spoken for the voice of the land and for us to learn the ways. And this is that time. We are in the 7th generation. This eclipse is in the center point of something very important. And there's a deep transformation happening now. So there's a lot of books that I could show you about DC that speak of DC in this like way of the goddess. Does that feel true? But maybe that is meant to emerge, and maybe we are purging the things that are in the way. And what I will say is actually it's a place devoted to the principles of father, mother, and child, right? Because this is the great alchemical hieros gymos and the rebirth of self into new way of being. And this does not only apply for us as individuals, but it does apply for culture, for species, for planet. And we are engaged with that project if we choose to be. So there's something about looking at some of the ways where it really feels like it's gone off course, but also maybe to honor the possibility that's exactly on course, because it is the very catalyst for this awakening that's happening now.
Oh my God, Gemini, I have like goosebumps all over. So much of what you said just resonated so deeply. I'm sure the audience is feeling that as well. And specifically, so you know, I live in Hawaii. I live on Maui. I've just recently reconnected with one of the most incredible Hawaiian kahuna elders that I've ever met. And I am like that person with the light in my eyes at her feet saying, tell me, like, teach me what you know, teach us what you know, so that we can live in a new way. And there's been so many times where she is teaching and I'm filled with sadness because of the chasm between the world that she describes that is possible and that the Hawaiians for many thousands of years lived on these islands, and you know, the huge gap between where we're at now. And I remember in one of the first meetings I had with her, I raised my hand and I said, you know, she was describing how the elders used to take care of the children and how they would pass the wisdom to the children. And I was sad. I was crying in class, just like, God, we are so far from that. And I raised my hand and I said that and I expressed my pain and my sadness. And she said, well, maybe you're here to do something about that. Mm-hmm. And it was like, oh, wow, okay. Like, what do I do? How do I do it? You know? So I hear you. And she talks to the stones. You know, the Hawaiians call it the pohaku. And you're talking about talking to the trees, but and I don't know how to do either of those things. You know, I actually don't know how to talk directly to the trees or the stones. I can't hear them really. I mean, in nature, that's when I actually have my most creative moments. And maybe that is them speaking to me. I don't know. But this is exactly what you're talking about in terms of going to our elders and downloading as much wisdom as we can, and then doing what we can to live our lives aligned that way. And then also bringing our own creativity, our own ideas, our own visions to how this looks today in this modern time. You know, how do we actually create this, you know, whatever it is, this new Atlantis? I don't know what that original vision was. But when you were speaking of, you know, the original intent and then the reality of what happened in order to bring that idea forth, you know, the genocide, the atrocities that happened, that's our shadow. You know, that is our shadow. And that is what this eclipse is highlighting for all of us. It's like, well, if the goddess is core and central, then why do we do what we do to the feminine? If equality and living, you know, in harmony with each other and with the land is part of the vision, why did we have to kill people to supposedly bring that forth? You know, none of that actually makes sense. So I think when we talk about exploring the shadow during this eclipse time, those are the things that we're exploring. And again, it always comes back to us as individuals. Where is that shadow in us? Maybe we do hold a high vision for our lives, a high vision for our communities, for our families, whatever that is. And where is the shadow? Where is that not quite the reality? You know, where and why? You know, why is that the case? So, you know, these are all really huge and important questions for us all.
Yeah, absolutely. And you are speaking to the trees and the stones. And if we expect to hear English back, we're probably not going to have that conversation, you know, but planets are people. And here we are as astrologers, as students of these great guides and guidesses in the sky. And you know, there's a very true practice. And I have heard English, or I have seen shape-shifting, or mostly showing up in my dreams, or they'll send human beings to represent them in my life, or those weird numbers on the clock, or whatever it may be. And my practice is, hey, Jupiter, I'm Brett. Nice to see you again. I'm going to look at you eye to eye and invite you to be my teacher. And strange things happen. This happens with all of nature. Planets are nature too, right? Just one example in DC, like, you know, I'm not an initiate. I'm not in any of these brotherhoods or whatever, sometimes because I'm so deeply devoted to discovering these great secrets, and they say they know. I'm like, I'm going to join up, and I'm at the House of the Temple, this great Scottish Rite headquarters in DC. It's a strange building, right? And it feels weird. I'm like, maybe I should. And then this falcon flies in with a dead pigeon, and it's lands on the building and shakes its head at me. And I say, okay. And there I am.
That's an omen.
It's like, not in this lifetime, not for me, right? And that's
well, but Gemini, I feel that there's part of that, and I could be treading on some really interesting ground here, but the part where it, A, is a brotherhood, B, is shrouded in secrecy, maybe that's the part that is wanting to be shaken up and no longer. You know, maybe that's why you specifically are not meant for that path, you know, although some people may be meant for that path, and you know, blessings to you. But for you specifically, maybe you're meant to actually share and actually bring to light some of the things that have been, you know, in these more secret societies.
Yeah, it's interesting to look from the outside and try to. I mean, I know a few like 32nd degree Masons they all have the same story. We got into this thing thinking we were going to get the great secrets, and nobody's saying anything. It's like we just get together and drink. What the hell is going on here? Right. And what are we? And there's some interesting questions. Now that might just be part of the rap that you tell the dude that's not in the crew. I don't know. Maybe. But to get back to something I think that's maybe more in touch as we wrap up with this community's hearts, you know, as you're connecting to the true teachers of the land where you live, or as we do here, a lot of it is reconnecting to our old ways and to our own ancestors. And you know, this is a key part of the Hawaiian traditions for sure. But, you know, all my friends that I speak with who are in that study, you know, they're told, hey, you're not here to connect to our ancestors, you connect to yours. And that's a very difficult thing, right? Yeah. Because here I am as like white male. I grew up in Vegas, you know what I mean? Like just so disconnected. And the truth is, like, the shamanic people of my heritage were completely decimated through genocide millennia ago, right? And so it's difficult to connect, but just as we can speak to those of our elders who have passed on through the veil, that information is always available to us. It demands that we slow down and release ourselves from this rat race. Part of that rat race, so we can tune into the grace of Earth's pace, is this fear-based promotion and media. And so we come to places like this where we can have these strange conversations with a goal in mind that's not necessarily concrete, right? But just to explore and to feel and to sit in fellowship and community. This is so important to connect with our tribe and to be together and to share wisdom. And so I wanted to share, that being said, for those of you in the States or elsewhere, I'm co-hosting an eclipse retreat for this coming eclipse in Idaho. You can find it on the homepage of morethan.astrology.com. Deepest source hot springs on Earth, it's rumored, but definitely a sacred place. And it's going to be a sober weekend, so if that's not your thing, this isn't your thing, and that's cool. But yoga and good food and astrology and starry telling from the hot springs under very dark skies with live music and all sorts of stuff. And we're keeping it very cost effective because I'm really intent on gathering tribe to celebrate and communicate with this eclipse to help steer its energy of what its promise can be as we make our way to that place of peace and compassion. There's an events page on my site too. Some things aren't up yet, but in October, I'll be with the Organization of Professional Astrology at Zion National Park in Utah. Dark skies, awesome. Out to Australia with Cosmic Intelligence Agency. And then, and Amanda, I want to speak about you offline, but I'm going to come to Hawaii and be with the great master sound healer musician, John Dumas. And I think we're going to do some starry tellings under the sky on Oahu and hopefully Maui and maybe Hawaii as well. So
wow, amazing. Can you, the echo's back. Can you please do something about that? Thank you. Okay. All right. It's Done. Still there. I'm still hearing the echo. I don't know who that is. Okay. Thank you. What I wanted to say is amazing. I hope many of you can join Gemini in Idaho. I would love to be there, Gemini, but I am feeling very called to anchor in on these islands. Hopefully, I will actually be with the Hawaiian kahuna that I spoke about earlier, Auntie Mahealani. She is going to be leading the final day of our global eclipse meditation. So I'm hoping to actually be there with her in person. And it'll be the kind of thing where I won't be able to tell you all what she's going to do on that day. We are going to broadcast the global eclipse meditation for the eclipse day, the 21st, early. So those of you who want to watch it, you can join us for the meditation and then go and watch it. But I won't be able to tell you what she's going to do because she won't know what she's going to do until we show up. Her Hawaiian name means messenger of the ancestors or messenger of the kupuna. So she will get instruction on exactly what needs to be done for all of us on that day, and we will be along for the ride, and we will be co-creating with the kupuna, who I know will be a big part of it. So that's going to be the final day of the global eclipse meditation. If you don't know about this event, it's going to be 14 days of guided talks and meditations between August 7th and August 14th. It's completely free. We would love for all of you to join us. Every day is going to be hosted by a different meditation teacher, spiritual teacher, or professional astrologer. Gemini Brett is going to be leading one of the days. Woohoo! And so you can sign up for that now. And please share this with your friends. We want as many people to join us as possible so that we can be really anchoring the light, anchoring the love for this eclipse portal, this eclipse period. So that's available right now. I also wanted to just let you know that if you missed our Eclipse Mastery program, and if you are like an advanced beginner to advanced astrology student, you can still purchase that class. We did package it. It was an amazing course. If you are interested in diving deeper into your eclipse knowledge, you can do that now. The link for that is going to be in the chat as well. So I think that's it for announcements. Gemini, it's like every time we talk, you just open up more. And then I'm like, okay, we got to do this again. So I'm hoping that you'll be able to come back and do more of these Facebook Lives before the eclipse, because we just keep opening up more doorways, I feel.
I'd love to anytime. I'd love to do a workshop sometime too to help people find their own Saros cycle and look at these like heartbeats of the shadow in their own experience. And yeah, I mean, this eclipse meditation gift that Astrology Hub is bringing is so important because when we come together, I mean, we have like scientific statistics that show when we come together to meditate, we change the world. And this eclipse is listening as much as it's speaking. So as we come with our own heart, and again, as we said last time, it's measured from the center of the earth. It is everywhere on the earth. It is not just here. So you will be there, right? So I've got this this cup of tiger's nest pu'er. Hopefully we were comfortable in the tiger's nest today, in a solar eclipse cup to drink for our community.
Cheers.
Somebody wrote, when in Hawaii. It's not booked yet, but it'll probably be the first week of November. And again, more than astrology.com. There's an events page. I got to catch up with a lot of things that are getting booked right now. And I hope you'll check out the Secrets of DC, Washington Deciphered movie on YouTube. We didn't get into a lot of stuff that I thought we would today, and that's great because we got into some other stuff that it just comes through, right? We got Moon, Neptune, and that's how it's meant to be. So, Amanda, thank you so much for having me on, and thank you so much, Astrology Hub. You know, we are tribe here, exploring the marriage of the heaven and the skies. And I really hope that you'll bring your intellectual practice of astrology out to a living connection with the heavens and really actualize it into your sentience, into your body experience.
So beautifully said. Let's just leave with that. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. And we will catch you next Thursday, same time. Natasha Alter, continuing the conversation on astrology in the Aquarian age, upgrading the vocabulary, upgrading the way that we approach astrology. A lot of things Gemini talked about today with the fear-based, moving into a whole new realm of astrology. So please join us for that next Thursday. And in the meantime, take care of yourselves. Ahui ho. Until we meet again.